Hey guys, welcome back. SubLBC here, and this is going to be the second episode of Q&A on the new Growing for Freedom channel, which really isn't so new anymore, I guess. I've kind of been doing videos on this channel for a while now, but yeah, fuck, I don't even know when I started, to be honest. I was going to start out this Q&A elaborating on some few subjects from my Idiots on YouTube video, but I've decided against it. I really just don't want to get Q&A off to like a negative start. I already spend probably more than enough time talking shit to idiots that I really don't need to do any more of that. At least not right now. But of course, there will be a time, I'm sure, in the future when I will. So just be patient, everyone. I'm sure the opportunity will definitely present itself. So yeah, this is going to be a long Q&A. I think there's actually a few double questions or people sending in multiple questions, but only a couple of those. But yeah, there's a lot, and this is going to go a long time. So sit back and relax, and let's get this thing started. So, okay, this is a long one, guys. This comes here from Signorina. He says, "Sup, I would like to start by saying thank you. Thanks for all of your YouTube vids that have helped people like myself since the beginning. Much appreciated. I have taken the knowledge from you, MD, and a few others to create a solid, manageable process until a few recent pest issues. Which brings me to a few questions. Do you have, and here's also, I'm going to stop here right for a second, guys. I'm going to try to answer these one at a time. If I read the whole thing, then try to answer them, this will just turn into a rambling. So I'm going to go ahead and address question one, and here it is. Do you have a preventative maintenance method, such as pest, bugs, fungus, mold, mildew, and overall optimal environment musts to avoid such things? Yes. The answer to that question is yes. I have many preventative maintenance things, and they come in many forms. On my old channel, I think that I made a video called Weapons of War, and I think I should probably remake that video. It's a really great video for all you guys that have questions about pesticidal usage, fungicidal, stuff of that nature. And I'd really break it into like three major parts. Okay, first, you have insects in the medium that you have to deal with. Second, you have insects on the plants that you have to potentially deal with. And then thirdly, you have mildews, funguses, and molds on the plants that you have to potentially deal with. Now, when it comes to dealing with things that are living in the medium, my favorite combination is to use Azamax, 1 fluid ounce per gallon, and I combine that with pure imidacloprid. You can also, I think there's other products like Green Life or something I think might make something that you can also mix with Azamax. And I know the Green Life contains the chemical, but in a much lower concentrate. I use it in its purest form, somewhere along the lines of a 1/4 milliliter per gallon. I have to look at it's written on every single one of the things that I've got. I'd have to look and check, but if you really want to go into more detail, ask me again if you get your hands on the chemical, and I'll share with you. But I think it's 0.25 milliliters per gallon. At the most 1 milliliter, but I don't think it's that much. And then I mix a 1 gallon mix, and then I flood the COCO. I generally don't have insect problems ever in Rockwool because I use caps, and I'm really, really clean on the tables. But eventually, when mothers live for a long time, you'll just get shit. And this soak, a one-time application, you don't even have to use the whole gallon. You know, generally I'll mix up like 3 or 4 gallons to do the entire production line. But one application will wipe the things out. And it's always a good idea to hang the yellow sticky traps. I have tons of those things. I keep one pretty much for every mother plant. And, it just keeps the adults at bay. They will get away with a little bit of breeding, but again, you give them that soak, then they can't breed. Everything in the root zone dies. And the adults generally die too. You know what I'm saying? It's a real hardcore thing. Now that takes us to preventative maintenance for molds and mildews. And I do this at 2 points. Let's talk about mothers first. Mothers get an Eagle 20 hose down about once every month or month and a half. And I used to wait until PM issues would arise before I use it, but I don't do that anymore. I've now gotten it down to about a 45-day regimen where the plants get it every 45 days no matter what. And I've been increasing the strength of Eagle 20 to get effectiveness. I've actually been testing the product a lot for a while, and I'm up to about 1 milliliter per quart okay, which is roughly quadruple strength. But that's where I find it pretty much works the best for the longest period of time without having to use it over and over again. And that's the thing, you want to avoid using systemics over and over again. You want to hit them, and then you want a set day that you can guarantee that they're going to function for that time period. And with mothers, I tend to be a little more aggressive, only because of the business of cloning. You got to have mildew and mold free mothers always, at all times. You know, it can spread to other things, and you know, it's just not something that I can tolerate. But because I'm spraying them with Eagle 20, I generally use that opportunity to also mix a pesticide of some kind. Now, if I'm not seeing any kind of activity at all whatsoever on my plants, then I will combine the Eagle 20 with either a fluoromite dose at 1 milliliter per quart, or also maybe go to Judo, which I believe is also 1 milliliter per quart. Same guys who make fluoromite, but it's kind of part of their rotation, because if you just keep using the same shit, you might start causing the mites to build a resistance to it. So you have to have some kind of rotation. And the one that I find works best is going from fluoromite to Avid to Judo, back to fluoromite. That's really, you know, you do that constantly, you know, nothing is gonna really survive on your plants. But yeah, you know, like I said, if I don't see anything, I will just mix the fluoromite. If I am seeing activity, then not only will I use fluoromite, but I'll also mix an Avid. So it's a tri-shot. The Avid basically is the nuke. It just kills everything. The fluoromite is the lingering effect to basically kill all the next generations of mites that might come. And then you have the Eagle 20, which is going to completely wipe out any kind of mold or mildew that's going to grow on the plants. Now, when we shift gears over to using these products in flowering, I use them in flowering too. And I generally don't go for the trifecta though. Only a double product use only for flowering plants to reduce the number of things that I use. And you know, right about a week into transplant is about the cutoff time for using that shit, in my opinion. Before you see any formation of pre-flowers, essentially. So you got about 7 days after 12/12 to think about doing it. But that's generally when I do it. About 7 days in, that's when I find you have the most lasting effectiveness and 100% prevention of powdery mildew growing in the garden. And the fluoromite is laid down just as a preventative, just in case. And mix each at 1 milliliter per quart, and use a pressure sprayer. And you generally 1 quart will service the entire 4,000 watt. And then that's the last time that the plants get sprayed down with anything. And then that's it. You know, no more foliar spray, nothing. It's all just feeding and basics after that. So I hope that answers the question. So let's go on to your next question. Do you use certain products at certain times to achieve a manageable lower stress operation, like an umbrella type method to avoid more common problems? I do understand things can go wrong quickly regardless, like your AC going out. Sorry about that happening. To answer this question, do I use certain products at certain times? Well, I pretty much went over the entire mold and pest preventative measures, and I pretty much think that covers everything, really. There are no other products like umbrella, as you say. I mean, there are certain things that you want to do. Like, you want to make sure that, you know, the trigger for your lighting controller is tied to the same breaker that controls your AC unit and exhaust fans. You know, duh. That's obviously a basic one. You know, overfilling the reservoir by 10% and mixing based on 50 to accommodate evaporation. Another basic rule maybe, but as far as products, not really. So, third question. He says, a video with your method on these problems would be something that I'm positive your viewers would love to see. It's just hard to believe that people like yourself never run into mites, pest, indoor, fungus, molds, mildew, and such without having implemented a preventative. Well, to address this statement, which is not really a question, who says I never run into these problems? I do run into them. I've been lucky with mites because of where I'm located. You know, it's very difficult to get issues, and even if I do, they're very easy to contain because, you know, I'm a guerrilla grower, so I'm not about warehousing shit. You know, everything is very compartmentalized, which means that each problem, generally speaking, is also compartmentalized. Although sometimes you have cross-contamination. I mean, we've had our issues. But ever since, if I stick to the protocol that I just mentioned, I will never have those problems ever. You know what I'm saying? And, combined with producing enough plants, the sheer numbers that I do, it's really hard for me to run into problems. And if I ever do, it's always my fault, just laziness or, complacency or ego, hey, I've been so pest free for so long. Fuck it. You know what I mean? Like that kind of attitude. So, now, Signorina goes on to say, honestly, I would be willing to pay to see that vid, no joke, or I would be willing to pay for your method of these preventatives and or must-have products. Thank you again for all that you have done for people around the world. It means a lot. Signorina. Well, you don't have to pay me. I mean, honestly, just watch my videos. That pays me enough. Get the information and spread it. That's ample payment. You know what I'm saying? Favorite these videos. Make sure other people see them. That's really all that I ask. Yeah, I know that I'm addressing a lot of these here in Q&A, although a lot of my mainstream audience may not see this video. I probably should bring back weapons of war, and then we'll go over this in a little bit more detail. So, thanks for sending that one, Signorina, and let's see who's next here on this whole thing. Let's see. Okay, so this one comes from Matt. He says, hey, sub. First, thanks again. I owe much of my success to guys like you. I learned a ton from your sublbcqanda.com forum and all growers involved. Seriously, it was like an intensive online cultivation course. Anyhow, I ran across a video you did not too long ago demonstrating your KIEF extractor. Seemed like you were pretty happy with it. My back can't take the bag shaking, so I need something like that. What the heck was that thing called? Thanks in advance. Okay, so yeah, it's called the APE. It's the agricultural pollen extractor, and if you want to get some more information on it, you actually go to agriculturalpollenextractor.com. I believe that's the actual email address, and I know it's fucking ridiculously long, or not the email address, I'm sorry, the website address. And yeah, it's ridiculously long. I don't know why, but I guess they just didn't want to have any confusion about their product. So it is unfortunate that I do not have the item anymore. I had it for a while, and it was fucking incredibly awesome at what it did. The only problem is that there's really no market for KIEF. You know what I'm saying? And every time I use that thing, I'm essentially sacrificing wax production. I'm just cutting away into my wax production. And that's something I really don't want to do, because waxes are incredibly, incredibly high demand. So with that being said, I had a friend who actually wanted to do it. So he bought it. I actually had a friend that used to come over, and he would bring over dry ice with them, and he would KIEF his shit through my ape. So there were people. It sparked interest, but it takes up real estate in my garden, and without it really contributing anything, it just it had to go. But it's a terrific item. Again, if it's something that you like to do, if it's a market for you, or you just want it for personal, I highly recommend it, man. It's a really, really, really great piece of hardware. So. All right, let's see what we got here. This is from Kyle. He says, hey, sub, I have a couple of questions for you. First, would you have to be, or a couple of questions for you first would have to be in regards to mother plants. I was wondering if it is a myth or fact that a clone plant turned mother produces shittier clones or lower yielding and less potent buds. I want to go and just address that question right now. The bold-faced answer is no. Or I'm sorry, or if it is a myth, it is a myth, yes. You can make mothers from clone plants. All of my mothers are made from clone plants. And even if some of the characteristics that are expressed, because remember, obviously you're dealing with clones, so you are dealing with identical genomes, but physical characteristics become more expressed through generations of clones, just like they would with breeding. Breeding obviously happens a lot faster, clones a lot slower, but basically, what I'm talking about is drift. But, I've shown many examples of videos where, the Blue Dream strain that I was working with had really worked its way down to, like, shit, and it was producing lower yields, and, it was kind of like, But, from taking a huge collection of these crappy clones, there were, out of those hundreds of them, you will find the ones that have the right physical expression if you know what to look for. And you take that clone and you only take that one and you raise those in sets and produce mothers. And then you repeat that process and you will literally bring the strain right back to how awesome it was. And, Blue Dream is running awesomely again. The real trick is to know what to look for and to understand that drift goes both ways. If you really keep horrible generation or horrible quality generations after generation, then you can expect to have crappy results. But if you start to mass produce these crappy clones, and you'll notice some are a lot better than others, and you repeat the process in the reverse, then you'll work your way back again. And you can continue the process to, even make it stronger, although you'll never actually change, its base genetic profile. But you can definitely bring out the best of what it has to offer. So, continuing on here with Kyle's message, he says, I haven't had the chance to test this myself yet and was wondering if you could enlighten the subject. Also, how long do you keep mothers around? So I'll stop to answer that question as long as I can, and as long as they don't conflict with the overall grand scheme of things, because there is a set life, like a season, basically, predictive lifespan of the mother. Then I try to work around it, and I don't wait for the mothers to completely die before I start raising a next generation of mothers. It's completely idiotic. I'll make an effort to raise teenage plants, but in order to do that successfully with my available resources, well, at least up to this, until just recently, with the implementation of the LED, there comes a time where I might have to just retire the mother regardless of its ability to produce good quality clones, which is unfortunate, but at the same time, it strengthens the herd, because mothers are never allowed to really work past peak. But in a perfect world, I would like to keep them as long as possible. But many strains don't have the same life as others. Some can go longer than others. Like SFVs don't have a very long life versus strains like Kryptonite, which goes a long time. Blue Dream can go a long time too, if I want to keep satisfying its need to get vertical. But generally speaking, once the plant gets transplanted into a 5-gallon, it becomes a production mother. Now, it has produced clones up until its transplant, but from the moment it's transplanted into the Rootmaker 5, I generally will get about 3 to 4 months of peak production out of that plant. So, yeah. But again, like I said, situation always changes, and that's the thing about the nursery, is that you got to always be on your toes. You'll have a total grand strategy planned out, but things will change. And this just happened recently, bringing all my SFVs out of my LED and, basically doing the exact opposite of what I wanted to do. But, as long as you have the resources and you can, kind of roll with the punches, you still get excellent results. And I've been really happy with everything so far. So anyways, moving on. I have had mine for about 7 months and seem to be doing just fine, but was wondering if there is a life expectancy on a mother plant. I do not clone nearly as much as you do, but I do pull them quite often, and the only problem that I have ran into is keeping them out of the lights. Thanks for the great YouTube channel, and keep doing what you are doing. Just to address that statement, that is really the only problem, is keeping them out of the lights. If you're not taking as many cuttings as I am, they're going to just, if it's a semi-tall growing strain, it's just going to want to grow forever. And it can indeed grow forever. There is no life expectancy of cannabis plants. If you keep them in perpetual veg, they will live perpetually, forever. I don't think that anyone has ever documented, any like set lifespan for anything. And I think that I was reading in a book, it may have been the Grow Bible, I'm not sure, or some other book that I read, but there are some guys that are keeping mothers for like 15 years. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Okay, so let's deal with our next question here. This comes from MrMan. He says, when it's time to cut them down, do you trim it all? How many trimmers do you hire? And what is their compensation? Is it hourly or by the amount they trim? You're the only one left on YouTube. Keep them coming. Okay, so it's time to cut it down. Do I trim it all? No. In fact, I don't trim anything. I rarely ever pick up the scissors. Sometimes if we need to speed the crew along, then I'll jump in and help. But, we essentially are a very organized cutting crew, and it works. I think I mentioned this in just like one of my previous videos. But essentially, a 4,000 watt garden to be taken down efficiently requires a 6-man team. What I generally do is that I take Dink OG or one of the smaller females, send them in to do the hunting. And the reason why I pick them is because they're smaller, more agile, and they can get in kind of the weird places without like destroying shit. You know, if I send one of the guys in there, you know, it always just becomes a problem. It seems the girls have a little bit better hands-on experience, and because of their smaller frame, they can work in tight spaces a little bit better. So they go in and do the hunting. They'll start bringing the stuff in, and then, you know, we'll have the remainder of the team with myself. We'll go ahead and basically run the cutting table. And their first priority is to, you know, deal with all of the bigger buds, right? So we have a 6-man team, and I basically just oversee the thing. And I do count myself as the 6th. My big job is really to oversee everything, to make sure it gets done correctly, and to also, you know, it's my job to build the dry tent, you know, so I hang up everything. I make all the branch selections, what goes where, and what goes in the basket. And then when we're done working through everything, I basically call it, and then we clean up, and then that's basically that. As far as compensation is concerned, it's completely up to you. I really don't want to speak publicly about compensation in this forum. I will only say that it's decent, you know what I'm saying, for what it's very easy work. And, you know, it's a paid break as well, and, you know, we order good food generally, you know what I'm saying. It's not like high stress, you know, people sit around and kind of get wasted, talk shit, you know what I'm saying. It's pretty laid back. It is an hourly, although I will say this, that some of the cutting crew do have the option, if they wish, to take their hourly rate and translate it into grams. So, you know, the same cutting crew that brings it down is the same cutting crew that comes back to manicure. And then at that point, at that point, you know, they can take whatever their percentage of whatever they manicure and add their hourly onto it to boost their take, which generally works out better for most, because, you know, the cost of herb is, you know, generally speaking, is going to be more than the hourly. Now, as far as the manicuring is concerned, which is very different from harvesting. Harvesting is a pure by the hour type thing. The manicuring is a pure by the volume type thing. And then that's real simple. It's pretty much standard issue rate across the board. Pretty much everyone that I've ever worked with employs the same basic payout system, and that is 1/16 of the volume, or 1 ounce per pound, to make it simple. And that's basically it. You know what I'm saying? And yeah. And then my cutting crew is also involved in other things. There's other ways for them to make commissions, you know, after the fact. So it goes deeper than that. But as it concerns the harvest, that's how it's done. 6-man team per 4,000 watt will generally get it done. And, you know, the same crew works not only my 2, but other gardens as well. So they're very busy. And, yeah, you know, it works out pretty great for everyone. And looks there, MrMan had another little question or statement. He says, why the fuck do you let your clones grow so tall? Talking about the SFVOG. If you already ran that cut multiple times, you see that it stretches like a motherfucker. Why do you let them grow 2 feet of stem before one top? Makes zero sense to me. Why not top as early as you can, or LST, so that 1 foot you already have multiple tops? This will help your double net crazy ass canopy. Only drawback I see is that this will take more spacing and veg. A man in your position, I would think that's a very little expense. A few more lights tables. If this is an obvious answer to you, please elaborate and share your wisdom. I honestly don't understand your rationale. Keep them coming. Okay, well, if you just saw the video previous to this one, yeah, you know, they grew a little bit tall, and then, you know, I probably could have topped them earlier. I do that sometimes, but I have noticed with the SFVOG, if you top too early, they really have a difficult time recovering, you know, if they've just been freshly transplanted into the 4-inch block. And I like to have them a little bit more vigorous. And I will admit that some of the clones that I've shown in some of my recent nursery videos, as well as the plants that were being prepped for Site B, were a little bit on the tall side. But, you know, a lot of those plants are going to be eliminated, and a lot of the ones at Site B were eliminated. And even though they do get a little bit leggy in the initial stages, to start your topping at that point is not a bad thing. The plants, they do stretch like a motherfucker, but they do have to stretch to some degree just to make it into the canopy. Keep in mind, you know, there's a 42-inch cage, 4-foot layer, 5-foot layer. They have to at least get over that. Otherwise, they'll come up too short. and I'll have the same problems, but in the inverse. You know what I'm saying? So it's always a work in progress. Not everything's perfect, but I think that the results are still consistent, and that's really what I'm looking for. I want consistent results, and I am trying new things and different things, and more aggressive topping and super cropping and pinching are going to be some of those things. In regards to, dealing with your statement of drawback, topping them too early might cause more side branching. That isn't really a huge issue with the SFV, but the expense is not the issue. It's the space that's the issue. Throwing in another 2x4, you know what I'm saying? I'm really trying to fit everything into a common system, which is a dedicated 8-foot by 8-foot dedicated grow space with exactly 25% of that square footage relegated to veg. So if I have an 8x8 for 4,000 watts, and that's my dedicated grow, then I should have, essentially a, 2x4s or 4x4. Essentially 25% of the effective grow space will be what I allocate to veg. And I really want to make everything work within that system because I'm trying to develop a system. If I go too crazy custom, then every system becomes too crazy custom. And it's not how I want to do things. I'm all about compartmentalization of my gardens and everything being an effective mirror, and there are some nuances, especially with veg, but in flower, I really, really, really want consistency. And even with that, I still have some nuance. I'm running fluoros, 8-bulb T5s in Site B versus the 4150s, but that creates kind of an issue. I have to address that. And it would be nice if everything was consistent. We can't always have it that way. But I at least want to stay by, the base guidelines as much as possible and work within that framework. So I hope that makes sense to you. So moving on, we have another question, and thank God this one is short. It's just from Esther. He says, if a person is to use the Eagle 20 and the Floor-Mite together at the switch to 12-12, do they use them at half strength or full strength? Best regards. Well, I just answered that question in detail, and I'm not going to tell you to go back. I will address it again. And the thing is, I use them at heightened strengths. Floor-Mite general recommended strength is, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.5 to 0.75 milliliters per quart. And I use it at 1.0, which, isn't that much stronger than the recommended strength. However, with Eagle 20, the recommended dosage is made very clear at 0.25 milliliters per quarter gallon. However, I find that to really get effective, long, absolute strength, the 1 milliliter per quart is the way to go. And this is after a lot of testing and slowly stepping it up to that dosage. I'm not just like jumping right to the max, some weird dosage, and I'm like, oh yeah, it works, with the option being much lesser doses probably working too. This is a step up from the recommended, and I find that it works best. I use both of them together, so you would mix 1 quart of fresh water, add 1 ml of Eagle 20 combined with 1 ml of Floor-Mite, and make sure it's nice and mixed. Make sure to use a pressure sprayer, and make sure to get both the tops and bottoms of the plants. You do that, and you will have excellent results. And make sure that you don't do it on the plants when the lights are on. Make sure the lights are off. You can do it at night, no problem. But if it's the middle of a daytime cycle, make sure you just turn on your, standard ambient room lighting with the HPS system or whatever you have off. And make sure the plant's fully dry before you resume any kind of high output HID lighting. So, yeah. Next question. This is from Graham. He says, I was just wondering how aggressively you cut your mothers with this new 14-day cycle. Would love to see an update after the next round of clones. I watched the large volume cloning videos when I first started watching your channel, but still want to see the next installment on the topic, like you were mentioning in the first Q&A. I know you've heard it countless times before, but you really are an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Graham. Well, thank you for inspiring me. It's a two-way street with the inspiration. I would not be inspired to make videos if people were not watching them. So keep that in mind. In regards to how aggressively I cut my mothers, as aggressively as I can, generally. We take every single good, high-quality cutting that we can off. And there's a strategy that goes with it. And I'm going to explain this more in the upcoming Grower's Guide to Commercial Production Cloning. Because, every tray is built 25 at a time. And, depending on where we're at, you know what I'm saying, we'll examine the mother, and sometimes, we'll finish a tray, but, we know we don't have enough clones to finish a complete next tray, so we'll leave behind, you know what I'm saying? And we kind of use this lucid approach to make sure we're not aggressively overcutting. And, sometimes, as Danko G goes through, if she runs out, she has implicit instructions, to stop the tray, I make it very clear to her that, and to any future cutters that I might hire in the future, that they're not to overdo it. Don't force a full 25. If there's 10 good ones and that's all there is, then take those 10 and don't keep cutting the mother, because it is going to dramatically shorten its life and its future production. So there are, we do stress that, and I will go more into that with the next Grower's Guide to Commercial Production Cloning. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Again, thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll have more of that stuff coming along, I'm sure. So this moves on to David says, hello, I was wondering if you do all of your topping in the vegetative stage, or do you top in flower as well? I've always topped mine in veg, but I stopped when I heard that if you top them in veg and then set them into flower, it messes with their flowering hormones. Then it was recommended to me to only top after the first week in flower, and I wanted your expert opinion on the subject. Thank you. No, excuse me. Thank you, David. Well, to be honest, no, I never top in flower, and I used to, and I really wasn't happy with the results doing it at all. And topping is really a veg thing. Fucking with their flowering hormones, not that I'm aware of. In my personal experience, if you don't top your plants in veg, you are really leaving a lot of yield on the table. You know what I'm saying? You'll get decent grows, but you have to top your plants in veg, and you have to reach a certain type of form to optimize your plants for indoor growing, because they're not outside. And outside is a completely different condition. You have a rising sun, a peak sun, and a setting sun. The sun moves across the sky. So the Christmas tree type shape is perfect. You know what I'm saying? But when you go indoors, you have a fixed lighting point that never moves. So you want your plants to be like an upside down Christmas tree with all of their shit basically on one layer, like a carpet. You know what I'm saying? And you're basically just pushing the light into that area. And this is only going to be achieved by topping, super cropping, stuff of that nature. You can use LST to bend an untopped plant, but that's not going to work with all strains. Some strains do not allow you to LST them. You cannot LST really a kryptonite or the super kush or Mendo after, really. I mean, maybe the blue dream, but you're much better off topping it and then trying some kind of antiquated LST. Basically, you have to top your plants. I don't think you're going to find too many growers that will disagree with me on that one. And most will also suggest vegetative stage, and that's where I do mine too. So hope that answers your question. Moving on, this is a question from Russ. He says, hey, sublbc, thanks for giving your viewers the opportunity to get specific questions answered. Could you please cover, and there's a list of things, and I will answer each question one by one. Number one, you run both the Rootmaker 5s and 7-gallon pots. Do you see any advantage in paying extra for the Rootmakers? I don't know, because I've never used them both for the same purpose. I have yet to use the 7-gallon pots, as you've seen in my videos, as mother pots. Now, I have used 7-gallon pots before in the past. In fact, I use these kind of specialized, like the Oaksterdam pots from Oakland. I mean, if you're not from there, you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But if you buy a mother from Blue Sky, you'll get it in a polyurethane 7-gallon with handles on it. And these are my absolute favorite pots for growing mother plants. And the reason why I went to the Rootmaker 5 is because it was available. These other pots are kind of difficult to get. Even in Oakland, I had to go all the way to Berkeley, not Secret Garden, but I think it was just Berkeley, the one right across the street from Secret Garden. I don't even know if they're even there anymore. But it's right there on University, and they stocked them all the time. And that's where I basically got them. And ever since I've come down to Los Angeles, I've never seen them again. And I've been able to get a hold of the 7-gallon squats, but I've never used them for mothers. And I really like the Rootmaker 5s. So I don't even know if there's going to be a time that it will come where I'll even use the 7 gallons for mothers. So with that being said, I can't really answer that question. Only to say that I find that the performance of mother plants in the Rootmaker 5 is comparable to that of what I did in 7 gallons, as far as how the plants grow, life span, all that fun stuff. The only real Rootmaker, or the only real advantage really of the Rootmaker, is that you can run a pot with a lower amount of medium, and get similar results. And the plants seem to really like it, but whatever, dude. I don't think it's like such a huge deal where it's a make or break for the moms. Goes on to say that there's your second question, I guess. Your last Q&A, you stated you top off the nutrient reservoir when 25 to 30% remains, and do so several times during flowering. Do you consider that your mid-run flushes? How many days max will you run the diluted solution? Well, there is really no how many days max. Watering in a hand-watered system is different than a continuous top feed drip. You know what I'm saying? I water my plants only once every 3 to 4 days. And the very first reservoir, assuming we're starting at the beginning, will be, filled up with fresh water. And right before we water, we will mix the nutrients. And the reason why this is done, obviously, is to get the freshest, best mix. You're not going to have any shit settling to the bottom. You're mixing it right into the pump is pumping water right back into itself. You're mixing all of your nutrients in the stream, so it's really well mixed. And I'll let that fucking pump run continuously and cycle that reservoir, for a good amount of time before I introduce the newts. And then I pH it right there on the spot too, so I know exactly what the pH of the water is that's going right in. So I will go ahead and water the plants completely with that solution. And depending on how much water they absorb, there could be 25 to 30% remaining. There could also be 50% remaining. But usually, in the early goings, it's about 50% remaining. And then when the watering is complete, I go ahead and top off that reservoir with nothing but fresh water, effectively, cutting it to half strength. If it's 50%, then we cut it to half strength. Obviously, if there's less water remaining, then the dilution is higher. I don't know if I would call it a mid-run flush, but what I would consider it is obviously a reduced strength watering, but there are clearly still nutrients in the mix. So once I top off that, I wait 3-4 days for the plants to dry out completely, for their next watering, and then I will introduce that new solution. Of course, pHing right there on the spot. Now, of course, since the reservoir has been topped off, after I get done watering, there's going to be another 25 to 50% remaining, but I do not keep that water. At that point, I will go ahead and drop the water completely. I just dump the reservoir completely, and then I reset it up with a whole new, fresh batch of nutrients. Well, I don't really do it right there, but I fill it up with fresh water, and then I wait till 3-4 days again. Then I will mix the all fresh newts, and then repeat the process. And then it just keeps going, you know what I'm saying? And then when we get towards the very last feeding reservoir, then it's a full strength. Then we top it off with half strength, and then we go right into flush. So it's kind of like a taper down effect there for the end of the cycle. So I hope that answers your question. So moving on here, Russ says, on your October 12th video, you briefly stated the SFV OG at Site B was superior to that of the Moneymaker due to AC issues. Are both considered vendable top shelf? No. They're both considered vendable, sure. But the stuff coming out of the Moneymaker was definitely not top shelf. And it was not being offered up at a top shelf price, clearly. So, yeah, that's pretty much the straight answer to that. Could you compare and contrast, in your opinion, what separated top shelf versus slightly less than top shelf? Nose was 1. Trichome development was 2. And just overall bag appeal was 3. And, honestly, I don't really know because the grow at Site B is not completely done, but it was pretty clear, that it was going to be a superior grow than that of the Moneymaker. And when the bud gets hit with a lot of heat like that, it's going to cause the resinness to just essentially get used up. You know what I'm saying? The plants have been dealing with too much stress. They can't battle it by resining up, so they just kind of give up. You know what I'm saying? And then when they lose as much foliage as they have, or as they did, based to heat, they don't have the resources or the lifespan, the remaining lifespan to battle back in any real way. So at that point, you're just kind of cradling the grow to the end, and that's basically how the Moneymaker ended. Site B didn't have those types of issues. We did have a lot of heat, but at no point did the AC fail. You know what I'm saying? We threw a couple breakers a couple times, but that generally isn't going to fuck up things too bad, as long as you don't do it too much. But we've corrected those issues with a little bit of rewiring, and I don't think it's going to happen again. But there was never any situation where the garden was just, sitting in a room with no air conditioning under 4,000 watt lights. You know what I'm saying? And it would have been nice to have some kind of a controller failsafe. Excuse me. That would would have taken the lighting off. But even better than that, it would be nice if they just reduced. Because even without an AC unit, if the output drops to 400 watt per reflector, 1,600 watts with good airflow, even hot conditions, plants will generally hold up to that. But you start pushing 1,000 watt plus, it's pretty much finito if your AC takes a shit. So probably gonna have to at the very least, get a failsafe for my controller that's temperature sensitive, and it hits this temperature. We just kill the fucking lights and, deal with the repercussions later. That might be a better strategy. Who knows? So, last one. I'm sorry, I'm going on here with more from Russ. He says, last one you may not want to answer. I'm also in California and am a 215 compliant. The last Q&A you stated your dislike for dispensaries, as do I. I employed the services of an attorney when setting up my small grow. I learned early on that dispensaries that give or sell growers permits or licenses are not worth the paper they are printed on. The only protection defensible is to incorporate as a dispensary or collective. Would you mind sharing what protections you currently have in place? I emailed you before regarding clones. Could you please contact me once some SFVs are available? Thanks. I really appreciate all your information. I will definitely try to. Oh, it's me again. I'm sorry. I will definitely try to get in touch with everybody, or at least give information on how to get access to clones when we start hitting some of these, surplus gluttons. Where we're trying to get there, but the demand is still, we just got to get people off the table and then get to a surplus state. It's just been impossible to do that. But when that happens, we'll let everyone know. Yes, the only protection is that is defensible is to incorporate as a dispensary or collective. Not as a dispensary. I want to make that very clear. But as a cooperative collective, yes, absolutely. And I highly recommend it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to go into too more details about the legalities. I have to think of a better forum to really talk or try to kind of do what I was doing before, where we have a close-knit group of trusted individuals. And I can really, start to talk about, a lot of these really, really great subjects, because I have done a lot of research on this stuff. I've been involved in this shit for years, and over the last couple of years specifically, I've really dove in, and I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of things, and I've also have come up with a lot of cool ideas that could really go a long way to help a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? Especially, growers in the community, and and I think that the nursery, as it is, could be the crux of something more special than just an outfit that pushes out a lot of clones, because obviously we're going to keep doing that. That's never going to change. But for growers that are stepping up their game, that want more services, and what I'm saying, there are other things that we could talk about, and there's things that I could share with everybody about what I've learned that could really, really go a long way to help growers. I just wish that I could go into detail in this forum, but it's just too public. And this is stuff that I what I'm saying. Not that the information is so crazy, but it's not something I necessarily trust everyone necessarily knowing. And for people that want to know more about it, that more importantly are justified, in knowing more about these things, we'll try to get into some kind of a forum or something. I don't know. I got to think of something. Maybe you have some ideas. Let me know. And but I do want to just make it more than just a one-on-one communication, because I know that more people will come at me with this, and it would be nice if, maybe we could all get together, maybe like a SL meetup. We've done those before, and they work really well for these types of things. Groups can get together and, virtualize, and we can have some man-to-man talks, which is a way better way to get information than even Q&A, and I'm addressing fucking everyone's questions. So anyways, let's go ahead and move on here. Okay, this is from Peter. He says, what's up, Sub? Do you use a specific brand of COCO COIR or whatever is available? And what pH is your input nutrient solution? I am new to cocoa, and I have been having issues. I tried canned cocoa out of the bag and have found that it takes a long time to dry out, and the pH of the runoff is 5.4. So I mixed some dolomite lime in my cocoa to raise the pH and added 50% perlite to fluff it up a bit. I read somewhere that a pH below 5.8 will lock out magnesium should I fluctuate the pH between 5.8 and 6.3. Any help is appreciated. Thanks. I don't want to address what it is you're doing because if you watch all my videos, it's very, very clear what I do. The long time to dry out is a good thing. And when you're doing your transplants, you want to have the cocoa to be somewhat wet and dark in appearance. And even after that, you want to flood it down. The whole process and what makes cocoa so great is watering it up and allowing it to dry out over several days. And this is great for those who want to hand water 4,000 watt or even much larger wattage gardens because, you know, you get in there and water the fuck out of them and then you kind of stand back for a few days. And if it takes long to dry out, so be it. It's a good thing. It's going to bring, it's essentially the plant's going to be leaching oxygen into the root zone. And that's where you're going to get your real growth spurt. It's not right after you water. It's as the water is disappearing and, as the plant really dries out, before it obviously gets bone dry and stressed. But in that little window of time is when all your really efficient nutrient uptake is going to take place. As far as the runoff of your pH is concerned, that seems a little low. Honest runoff pH of cocoa tends to be higher. But if you want to change that, you're better off adjusting the pH of your water, not mixing in dolomite and shit like that. You're better off just getting a soil pH meter for like $7 and just plopping that shit in there, ignoring your runoff pH completely, and just trying to make adjustments to your water to keep the soil pH exactly where you want it. And for cocoa, it should be in the high 5s to low 6s. A sweeping range of 5.8 to 6.3 is excellent in my opinion. I think that you should not have issues if you stay within that range. And sometimes I start a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit higher, but I find that cocoa is a very forgiving medium when it comes to pH. Unlike other mediums, such as rock wool, when you get into flowering, you really want to maintain that 5.5. I mean, you want to fluctuate a lot too, but you don't want things getting too high and certainly not too low. Versus cocoa, you have a little more freedom. So hope that was helpful for you there. Okay, so let's see. We got a fucking paragraph here. All right, this is I don't know who it's from. I'll just say Big Dan. Okay, so few questions, bro. First off, you are the reason I started doing videos. I'm a 20-plus-year-old grower and been scared as hell to show even my smaller ops on YouTube. So thanks for that. Anyways, I'd like to know numbers and methods on how you produce 6 ounces of wax per 4-light crop. Also, your feeding schedules on those clones on top trays in nursery. Not so much the newts you use, just how often. Every day? Also, any thought on coming over my way to undercurrent systems? Maybe the Master Blaster with 1500 watt bulbs? Thanks again for your videos. Peace, bro. Big Dan. And if you guys want to check out Big Dan, he's got a channel on YouTube. It is Big Dan's Green Thumb. And he's got a YouTube channel, so check it out. He left it there, and I'm pretty sure that he wants everyone to see it. So I would like to know the numbers and methods on how you produce 6 ounces of wax per 4-light crop. Well, first off, I don't produce 6 ounces of wax per 4-light crop. Certain strains have gotten up to their... the Blue Dream and the Mendo Afgoo are pro strains for yield and volume and ease of formation. Just fucking phenomenal. Both. It's hard to say which one's better. They're both just phenomenal. The SFV OG wax, though, is by far a superior wax, but it gets nowhere near 4 ounces per 4-light crop. So numbers and methods is something I'm going to have to stick to a BH or when I do a BHO video. And I will plan to do one later. I got all these new cameras now and tripods and shit. And I'm going to be doing some crazy BHO videos. So might be a while, but I do BHO a lot. And I just got to, plan for it. As far as feeding schedules on those clones, you don't really care about the newts just so often. Every day? Yes. I water my clones every day. The only exception is if I'm running my my fluorescent arrays in 50% mode. Then they can go 48 hours if they're immature. But the moment they start perking up and they're rooted heavily and they're kind of getting big, 2 inch, then yeah, they got to be watered every single day. and without fail. And if that somehow gets missed, especially with all 8 bulbs illuminated over each, set, then it's basically genocide. They just all die. They can't survive without being watered every day. Let's see. He says, any thought of coming over my way to Undercurrent systems? And absolutely not. There's absolutely no chance that I will ever move it to an Undercurrent system. I'm pretty much against all prefabricated systems. And the more intricate and proprietary they are, the more that I'm against them. And the Undercurrent couldn't be a more blatant example of this. Proprietary, prefabricated to the max is just not my thing. I want to build all my own systems for my own specific use. Not interested in Undercurrent. Although I've done deep water cultivation before. My very first grow was done with deep water cultivation, but on a custom built system that initially had issues, but eventually was tweaked and modified to work fucking really damn well. But I don't think that deep water cultivation is a good style for guerrilla growing, and it's not something I'm going to really preach here on this channel. Now, Master Blaster 1500 watt bulb, again, I don't see how it would be able to safely implement into my systems, and what ballast runs that, what I'm saying? I mean, again, this is very focused, semi-proprietary shit, and it's not what I'm into. I want to use things that are widely available by everybody, not only for myself, but for those watching this video, my videos. It's applicable to everyone. It's a way that we can all relate. And Undercurrent systems and 1500 watt bulbs, if I just did videos with all that shit all the time, I mean, sure, people might be like, yay, it's great, but that's not what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to, produce a growing system that uses things that are available to anyone who wants to grow, and can, you can mirror the system and get these types of results, and then from there you can just, run with it. So hope that answers all your questions. Let's see. Moving right along here, guys. This is from Vincent. He says, do you celebrate Christmas? If so, why? Question from a fellow non-believer. Anyways, I like hearing about your politics and philosophical ideas. It's nice to hear a different point of view, even though a lot of people may disagree with it. It's a different way of thinking, and it helps expand the mind. I definitely agree. And it's changing all the time, It's it's funny that people will chime up and talk a bunch of crap, and I've been accused of being a lot of things. But as time goes on, viewpoints always change. I'm always open to new evidence with things. But as far as Christmas is concerned, why would I celebrate Christmas? You know what I'm saying? I have absolutely no reason to celebrate Christmas. And, I'm not a pagan. You know what I'm saying? I don't worship the coming, or I wouldn't say worship the solstice, but I don't welcome the solstice with the winter solstice with a pagan ritual, which is, what Christmas really is, guys. It's completely hijacked by the Christians, taking over the pagan holidays. In regards to worshiping zombies, I don't worship zombies. You know what I'm saying? So Christmas really holds very little meaning to me. In regards to the very commercialized happy holidays shit, it's just a complete propagandized commercialism, and I really don't buy into that. I mean, what does it matter if everyone buys each other's gifts? It's retarded. I mean, just buy yourself. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, just looking at it logically, everyone's buying each other gifts. And, there's some people that want better gifts than the ones they're giving. And, some feel bad when they get a gift that's better than the one they gave. And, some people just exchange bullshit gifts that neither one even likes, which is waste. You know what I'm saying? And it's just fucking ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And if everyone's going to go out and just buy a bunch of shit, just buy yourself a bunch of shit. And then spend time with the people just like you normally would. And fuck the whole gift giving thing. It's just, I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? I think it was one of those things where I was a little kid and it was great. But, one day you wake up and Santa Claus doesn't exist anymore. You know what I'm saying? And you kind of move on. And at this point, it's not something that's really that terribly important to me. And it's not really that terribly important to my family either. You know what I'm saying? They can even see me at all, which is very rare at this point. They're happy and they understand the situation that I'm in, and the kind of work that I do and the amount of dedication that it takes and the fact that I just can't travel really and that everyone has to come here. And, even then, I'm working on Christmas Day. I work every fucking day, 365 days a year. Even the days that I'm not working, I'm kind of working. You know what I'm saying? There's no release ever. And when you're constantly fighting, or I wouldn't say fighting, but you're constantly living under these conditions where even though you have a lot of free time, it's all parsed out between things that you have to do every single day. So you really just can't let go. And you're like that year in, year out, year after year after year. So these fucking things just don't matter. Birthdays, Christmas, New Year's, it just becomes one blur. And I really don't even look at, to me, it's almost like seasons. I have the winter grow season and then I have the summer grow season. And I live my life season to season. I don't have time for, this bullshit in between. So I hope that answered your questions. And I do want to at some point maybe expand on some, not so much politics, but philosophical ideas. I think are really something that a lot of people that watch this channel would take a lot of interest in. Politics, it just gets too many people riled up, and for the wrong reasons. And there's too much ignorance in the audience. I really, I feel kind of bad saying that, but it's true. And if we really try to expand subjects and, try to just get back past the dictionary way of thinking and really examine things for what they really are, I don't think that this audience is ready for those types of conversations. And when it comes to philosophical, though, especially how it applies to growers and in the lifestyle, then I think people are really interested. And philosophy is very important when it comes to doing this job. So there are a lot of things, and I think I mentioned this on Facebook and maybe mentioned it in the video, but what it takes to be a grower is going to be an ongoing series. There will be at least 2 more parts, possibly a third more, so 4 parts total. We'll see. It depends on how I edit. I'm still doing kind of the structure because, this is going to be a real, a real video. You know what I'm saying? Edited, not fully scripted, but definitely made with purpose. And you will see it in the presentation. And I really hope that people enjoy it. And more importantly, I hope that people learn from it. You know what I'm saying? So let's move right along here to, I guess, another one here from Signorina. I'm getting kind of antsy because I've been sitting here for basically a fucking hour. All right, hold on just 1 second here, guys. Okay, so he says, should have mentioned this in my last email. Another vid that I wish was out there about 14 months ago would have been a what to expect vid. Basically a vid for all the new growers that think you can just pull a seed out of a bag or grab a clone and produce a garden that's productive. Maybe a shockingly honest breakdown of the material needed, along with an approximate time it takes to hold down such a thing. Can't forget the pest problems or mold, or a must-have minimal approach to explain the musts to successfully produce on a minimal budget. Environment is key, as you know. Now, I want to stop right there. I want to make this very clear. I will never make videos on how to succeed on a minimal budget. For anyone who's watched my videos and understands my psychology, is I run my gardens in a lavish style. I'm a guerrilla grower, that's true. But even so, I run them as lavish as most guerrilla growers can. And I can step it up still, with investments in mini split ACs. And, I could do a lot of things. But, being a guerrilla grower, you do have to sometimes deal with limitations to what you can do with where you are. And I address that in my videos. But as far as what to expect, expect failure. There it is. There's the video. Expect failure. The first grow is generally going to always be a failure if you don't have someone holding your hand. You just don't know what to look for. You really don't have a grasp of anything. You know what I'm saying? It's all just like stuff you've read and in videos you've seen. But the moment it becomes organic and it's in your hands, everything changes. And every grower I know understands exactly what I'm talking about. So expect failure. There's what to expect. As far as everything else is concerned, watch my videos. We're over 100 videos now. There's going to be hundreds more, all talking about, what to expect, or at least trying to work towards an expectation, or at least there is an expectation now. You know what I'm saying? And we're trying to fulfill that expectation. So, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Moving on here. Let's see. I have watched you mention these things in numerous vids, okay, but never a description of what's needed, basics, and or preventative maintenance must to give these new growers a head start. Once again, thanks, Signorina. Oh, what's your curing method on a commercial level? Thanks. I'll leave you alone now. Well, I mean, fuck, you know, how... I don't know if I'm ever going to do a video that's going to completely talk about every little piece of hardware down to the nuts and bolts. It would just take too much time, and honestly, it wouldn't be interesting enough to anybody. I try to go over all the things, you know, where I think the kind of, you know, there's kind of like an event horizon of understanding, okay? Everyone understands everything up to a certain point. And I really want to focus on that point, you know? Right where that threshold starts to become, you know, blurry and the understanding starts to kind of fade is where the videos want to come in, and then we deal with that and we focus those areas. I think that's what makes the channel great. You know what I'm saying is, you know, we expose the repetition of the growing. You know, we look at everything in stages, and I really focus on the mindset, what I see and what I'm trying to, you know, deal with, the up and coming problems, you know, all this crap. And you just have to watch all the videos. And yeah, you know what I'm saying, that's pretty much that. And I don't plan on doing, you know, where to get, you know, fucking, I don't know, like shit, you know, like pipe straps, you know, or fucking what types of screws you want to use and that shit. But anything else, sure, you know, and I've gone into a lot of detail, you know, as far as pumps, GPH, the types of, you know, vinyl hosing you want to use for specific purposes. And, you know, all I can say is that if you have specific questions, pose them here and I'll answer them. So, curing method on a commercial level. Well, I don't know if there is really a commercial level of curing. Curing is curing, and it's the same for everybody, whether you're a personal grower with a 150 watt HPS system or a commercial grower with, you know, 100,000 watts. You know, the real basic rule is to make sure that you don't put wet shit in curing jars. You know, that's really the beginning. And as long as you stick to that, you'll generally be okay. And don't overstuff the jars. You know, 50, 65% full at the most. Burping them as often as possible. 3 times a day, I think it should be more than enough. You know, once a day generally is good for most. And yeah, don't put wet shit in jars. So there's that. So we're getting here to the second to last, and this is from Bob Marley. He says, I am very interested in your clones. 10 of my Russian rocket fuel seeds died and need replacement for the empty pot. All the vendors and collectives here in Washington suck. They all have spider mites and can be bullshitting sometimes. And I trust you and love the way you think. Your personality really came out after the Q&A video. You could be the next Steve D'Angelo or Mark Emery. Haha. You seem to be a great leader anyways. HMU. I guess. I don't know what that means. Yeah. So thanks, I guess. Although I am not trying to be the next Steve D'Angelo or Mark Emery. Especially not Mark Emery. Especially neither one, you know. I know Steve D'Angelo. I don't know him really anymore. I mean, I met him. A lot of people have that are from the area. And he seems like an alright guy, I guess. You know what I'm saying? I don't generally have too many opposing stances to a lot of the more prolific leaders in the Bay Area cannabis movement. But I certainly don't want to be Mark Emery for obvious reasons. I want to be sublbc. You know what I'm saying? I am sublbc. I'm different from a lot of these other guys. And I want to kind of stand on my own. You know, I don't want to be considered part of a group, and you'll never catch me at a fucking weed fest or fucking, you know, stone fest or whatever the fuck fest they're doing with fucking weed nowadays. I'm just not into that because I don't think it has anything to do with the community that's important to me. That's the grower community. So, you know, and even then you won't find me at grower conventions, you know, because you know what I'm saying? You're just not going to generally find what you want there. Unless you're just a hydro store or a hardcore grower with needs a wholesale hookup. So, you know, I really want to focus on the community that is important to me, and, you know, to be honest, is important to everybody, and the actual producers of this fucking shit. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, Steve D'Angelo, he's just a dispensary owner. You know, grower, maybe at some level, but, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I guess what I'm saying is I just don't want to be, like, considered with any particular group for this. Now, as far as getting a hold of clones and stuff like that, well, if you're in Washington, then you're SOL, buddy. You're going to have to jump in your car and take a long-ass drive and get a card and jump through all the bullshit hoops that we have here in California. But if you do all that, You should be able to get access to clones when we do have a surplus in inventory, which will be coming up here probably in less than a month's time. We're getting down there, guys. It's getting very close, and obviously there's a little bit of evaluation that's got to go down, but I think less than a month's time there'll be plenty of surplus. And for all you guys that are willing to make the sacrifice, if you are out of state, the resource will be made available to you. And finally, guys, this is the very last question of Q&A. So this is from Big Ghost. He says, "What's up, sub?" Or "What's up?" Yeah, I think "What's up, sub?" I just picked up some Heavy 16, Prime, Big Bud, and Overdrive because I was really happy with your results. My reservoir is also a 55 gallon. Can you please give us a detailed description of how much you use and when do you use it? Thank you for still making videos. They've really helped. Yeah, in fact, watch the video that came on right before this one. I talk about it, very, very straightforward. It's very, very, very easy how I mix the reservoir and the products that I use. Much more simplistic mix than what I've done before in the past. I've gotten a little bit out of hand at times and have paid for it, and I'm simplifying a lot with this line. Like I said, watch the previous video. Kind of towards the end, I talk about all of that. If you have a more specific question, because I think I've elaborated even more earlier in this Q&A, then hit me up again on Q&A. Otherwise, I think that between this video and the last video, it should answer all of your questions in regards to feeding. And of course, keep on watching the series as it moves forward. You're going to be able to watch 2 grows running that exact same system side by side. And, I think that you'll be able to learn a lot over the next couple of months. So anyways, guys, that does conclude the second episode of Q&A on the Growing for Freedom channel. Next video, I think we're going to probably be taking a look at the LED garden. We'll be making some minor changes in there. I think that some people have been interested to see how the plants have looked right after taking cuttings from them. And then after that, we'll check out the nursery a little bit, and then eventually work our way back over to Site B, which has been freshly transplanted, and obviously really looking forward to the results of that grow. So thanks a lot for watching or listening, and I will see you guys next time.